Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is the second in a series of webinars that is organized by the Danube Water Program, which is a combined effort between the World Bank and the International Association of Water Companies of the Danube, or water service companies from the Danube catchment, the IWD. This session will begin in a few minutes. I'm just going to provide, again, the instructions for everybody so that you can, as actively as possible under a webinar circumstance, participate in this discussion and contribute to the dialogue that is hopefully happening today and has begun last week in the first of the sessions that was held. That was, I think, a very good dialogue on the impacts of the corona crisis for the water service sector in the Danube region. If you wave your cursor across the bottom of the function, you should have now just seen a message, so welcome to everybody. You can see the controls for the your screen and for the webinar itself. The most important button for you then is the one in the middle. It's on my screen is a blue one. Which is looks like a little person, and that one, then you can see all the participants, and you can then join and see the participants there, but also then joining then the chat function, the one beside it, the round square. You can see the chat or the comments that people have provided. And I can say from experience last week, but also participation in other webinars, this chat exchange is extremely rich and extremely valuable, and I would encourage you to keep it open and to be able to see the fellow participants and the comments that they're providing. As I mentioned earlier, please feel free to just introduce yourself if you want, and particularly we're interested in what type of organizations are present, so don't hesitate even just to put a short comment and to provide your organization type. We will then, in any case, be having an opportunity to respond back to the questions after the presentations have been made. The session will be operated as follows. So we have 3 panelists with us. Unfortunately, our 4th panelist, Miodrag Babic from Banja Luka Water Utility, is unfortunately not able to join because of technical reasons, not of his own doing, but the technique, for whatever reason, has not seemed to work with the colleagues in Banja Luka. Nonetheless, we have 3 very experienced people in the water sector to continue this dialogue on the experience that people in the sector have had in the context of the pandemic that we have been all dealing with. As I mentioned, the title of this session is Exchange of Experiences Between Water Utilities and Delivering Service in Light of the COVID-19 Pandemic. And we have 3 presenters with us. We will start with Mr. Christian Hasenleitner from the Energie AG, and he will provide a perspective on the situation in the Czech Republic, the companies that they're operating within the Czech Republic. We have Ms. Evis Gabrea from Tirana, the Deputy General Director of the Water Supply and Sewage Company in Tirana. And we have Wolfgang Eichelzeder, the General Manager of Upper Austria Water, which is an umbrella organization for small, and in some cases very small, Wolfgang will explain himself, water operators who are managing in rural circumstances the water supply, and often people that are forgotten about in terms of thinking of water supply, but providing some of his experience in terms of what the current circumstances have meant for people providing service in those contexts. As I mentioned, the purpose of this particular session is to exchange experience. We're very happy that on the call, we know from the registrations there are a number of people from a number of different countries, people from throughout the region, people from utilities. We have a large number of people from the utilities, people from Belgrade, from Skopje, from Tirana, clearly, from Pristina, as well as a number of other utilities in Montenegro, Romania, various people who have experience in this, and I really would encourage you to add in the chat column your own experience as the session unfolds. We also have people from the utility associations, again, the partners, they're members of IWD, partners in delivering the programs that IWD is engaged in, together with our colleagues from the World Bank. And we're very, very happy to have the participants from those institutions as well. But I see from the participant list, there's a number of people from governments, a number of people from other institutions, particularly financial institutions that are supporting the water utilities. And one of the clear messages I know from the very direct conversations we have with our colleagues at the World Bank, but also other institutions, the importance of responding to this crisis properly, but also in terms of how assistance may in future come. And this session, we hope, contributes to that in trying to help understand some of the needs that might exist related to this particular crisis that we have. This is the second in a series of 3 sessions that are being addressing this particular topic that is being organized by the Danube Water Program. The third session, though, will be done in cooperation with our colleagues at the NALAS, which is the Association of Local Government Associations in Southeast Europe. They will join together with the support of the regional RCDN, the Regional Capacity Development Network, which is an activity that is supported by GIZ and the Swiss government to encourage this direct cooperation between utilities and municipal governments, who are the owners often of the utilities. And that next session will be held 2 weeks from now, and that on the 28th of May. So next week there will not be a session, but in 2 weeks from now there will be, and I would encourage you to join again at that time. That one will focus particularly on the water safety planning, the ensuring business continuity in the context of such a pandemic. And we have, I think, from today's session, some good lessons that need to flow into that particular discussion. Yeah, with that, I would just like to begin to say that this is a challenge that has affected the water community in the same way that it has affected all other sectors of society. It has been a situation that in many cases perhaps has gone unnoticed, the work that many people in the sector have done to ensure service in this time period. That has been rather, I would say, in the background, as we heard last week from a number of the participants. Nonetheless, it involves a number of different circumstances at different types of utilities that need to be responded to, and good organization of the utilities from the people involved in the sector. And now, as I say, we will hear from different people who are coming from different backgrounds, and my sincere apologies that Miodrag Babic is not able to join us. Banja Luka is a utility of around 350,000 population equivalents, is also the place where the Danube Water Forum was supposed to happen this year in April, was not able to because of the pandemic, and we're hopeful that we can relatively soon have perhaps opportunities to meet again, and certainly in case of the Danube Water Forum, to have a follow-up. It's been postponed now till fall, to determine soon when that particular event will happen. So with this introduction, I would conclude and provide the floor to Christian Hasenleitner and ask him to provide his introductory presentation on the situation within the Czech Republic. Again, I see that many people are responding on the chat. I really would encourage you to do that. We'll be monitoring that the whole time and trying to select some questions that will go to the panelists. We'll have a little bit more time because of less panelists than we had anticipated. I see that there are, representation from people from throughout the world as well, including the Philippines here. I saw a representative from Southern Africa earlier. So welcome to all those from other parts of the world, as well as those from this region. So with that, Christian, if I could turn the floor over to you and to ask that the presentation that Christian's going to show be, that he be allowed to, the capacities to upload it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. Great to have you all on board and see, or at least hear or read from you. I think it's great to have such a big number of participants here today, about 65. Great achievement by Danube Water Program and IWD and of course World Bank. I was asked to give a presentation on the situation over the last weeks, and I would like to start with an overview of the activities or the utilities we have in the Czech Republic. You can see the map and the different sites of the companies. The bullets are water and wastewater companies. The other ones are district heating, but that's not the topic for today. Just to give you an imagination, these companies serve from about 50,000 to over 500,000 inhabitants. So we have everything from very small municipalities to district-sized cities. And of course, the situation in these municipalities, in these areas was concerning the threat more or less the same, but still the actings of the different companies were on the focus of their region. I would like to show you a short timeline how this situation developed in the Czech Republic. It was already at the beginning of March, it was clear that something is happening, and the companies by themselves provided themselves for something they did actually not know very much about. But they started to prepare. On 11th of March, there was state emergency declared. And from that time on, it became more or less official. In Energie AG concern, which is not just doing water, wastewater, it's also electricity and so on. There was a centralized crisis task force from 13th of March, but it was more for sharing of information and also to give a clear view to the board what's happening in the many subsidiaries of the group. From I think it was Monday, 15th of March, we had we ordered a shutdown of customer service centers in the group, and also the customer services were reduced quite heavily. So we tried, or the companies tried, to reduce customer service to a minimum. There was no entry anymore allowed for customers and visitors to the headquarters, to the offices, and also to the infrastructure operated. And all events were cancelled until at least fall this year. Most of them will be delayed and will take place next year. In this 1-2 days, it was heavy workload for the IT departments, of course. It was the implementation for the infrastructure for home office, and also to introduce adaptive organization schemes for operation. I will come back to these points later on. Mid-March again, also we started to share security equipment within the group, but also with a centralized purchase, or we tried to do a centralized purchase of security equipment, which was very difficult because the state was very strong on having his hands on all sorts of security equipment. On 20th of March, there was a reminder for the our employees concerning IT security in home office. But no major problems arose out of this. At the beginning of April, we had the first and last corona positive in our group, but he is already well again, so no more corona positives in the group. So it lasted about 20 days to get security equipment. So on the FFP2 and 3 level, which was delivered on 10th of April, and end of April, there was already declared the end of state emergency in the Czech Republic, still having a lot of measures to keep security on a high level. We started to introduce normal operation step by step from end of April, beginning of May, and in this time or in the last weeks we also had this SARS COVID-2 wastewater tests at some wastewater treatment plants, but up to now no positive results on this. So that's the timeline, and I will go now into some details talking about the customer service. I already mentioned it, that at first hand customer service centers were shut down and information was given on websites and social media that we ask our customers not to come to the offices and not to pay, or there's no possibility to pay in cash at the customer service centers. Accordingly, the payment goals were prolonged from normally 14 days to 30 days. We also introduced to minimize social contacts between the operating personnel and customers. So no meter exchange, no meter reading, so no operators going in the house, in the houses and in the households. Parallel to all this, the media informations were carried out on the security of water supply and water quality, mostly done, of course, via web, social media, but also in the regional TV and radio stations. Interviews has been carried out by our managers. So this issue became more or less no major issue at all. The information on this was, I think, quite good. Looking to the employee HR side, I tried to do a graph on the development over this time period we are talking about. The red line, you can see here the number of people working from home office, which was a real challenge, especially for the IT department to solve the infrastructure and the connections, secure connections, of course. So we had about from 1,700 full-time equivalents, we had about 15% in home office. Now slowly going back, we still have around 200 employees in home office, and until end of May, we plan to go back to full normal in this. There is still quite a number of about 30 to 40 which are at home doing childcare or caring for elderly people. We had some cases, about 20 of quarantine, which ran out already at the mid of April. And there was just one case which isn't visible here on the chart. Beside this home office issue, of course, in non-home office areas where the operation moved on more or less regularly, it was carried out in separated teams. One hand in the call center or in each area in each organizational area of the company, dispatching, laboratory, operation in general, also management. it was carried out in teams which the teams or the team members didn't have contact to the other teams, so that there always was the chance to have a backforward position if the situation deteriorates. The personal meetings didn't take place at all, more or less. So the most was carried out in video conferences, which proved quite successful. I already stated in video conferences with our IT experts in the past, we often criticized the IT departments for the huge costs for IT and IT security nowadays. I have to apologize by them because it really worked perfect and was worth the money which was spent already in the past. Another big issue of concern, of course, and still of concern is the business or the potential business impact of the whole crisis. You can see the charts here comparing on one hand the water consumption between the according month in 2019 and 2020. It's a sum of our whole group. So we had an average cubic meter delivery per day of about 75,000 cubic meters in March 2019, and we had about 78,000 cubic meters in March 2020. So this one is of course good news in April, but it's also related to the drought and the quite good weather we had in this time. In April, situation differs a little bit. Economy is going slightly down. And we can see that in April 2019 we had about 80,000 and now about 78,000. So a little backfall on the consumption compared to the past year. And I also wanted to share with you the development over the critical weeks, and also there you can see the when we start with 100%, we have a little development up to about 105, 108%, and now in the last 2 weeks it's going down to 90, 96, 97%, which probably is related to industrial consumption. Of course, that's not the end of the story, and this development will probably go on, and that's a major question for the future. So what will be the impact of the long-term, maybe probably economic crisis going also maybe throughout the next year or next years? What we are expecting is the risk of writing off receivables. As an operator, of course, we have to rely on the investments of the infrastructure owners, the municipalities and investors in the infrastructure. If municipalities have a lack of income, probably they will have, or I'm quite sure they will have not enough money to invest in the infrastructure. There will be reduced services, especially also related, of course, with investments in project works and construction works. We are carrying out these works too, so we are expecting a minus in turnover in this area. We expect in some areas reduced industrial consumption, of course, and a political pressure on tariffs, so tariff increases, which also could mean at the end less investments. So that's what we are facing and looking forward. There will be I just didn't want to end with all risks or all minuses, so I also added maybe a potential chance for the future, and that's a development of metering, because what we've seen is social distancing is absolutely a goal up to now, and probably will also take place in the future. So smart metering could be one solution to have at least a little bit of social distancing. We expect for the next year maybe a minus of about 10% of turnover and also of results probably. But it will prove throughout the next months what will be happening there. And last but not least, I also want to give you some impressions what also the staff did to and also, let's say, some charity measures when the companies recognized that the delivery of security equipment proves very difficult. They invented their own initiatives, and there was one initiative to sue for the staff. So it was distributed by social media, and quite a lot of employees started suing masks and delivering it to their colleagues. It proved quite successful. Another company, for example, bought from a nearby startup company 6 3D printers, and they started to print these frames for security masks, which is still an ongoing process, and the company is delivering this because they are supplied now fully, so they are delivering this mask also to voluntary organizations, to hospitals and so on. So it's also quite a successful initiative, and these masks are also donated for social workers and so on. So that's a very quick and brief overview over the last 2 weeks. We could or supply and also collection and cleaning of wastewater was throughout all this time 100% available, and it worked more or less like planned, and in a very professional and very quiet way, which I also had the impression from last week's webinar already, that many utilities proved that they are able to adapt very, very quick on such a difficult situation. So thank you for a moment, and I'm ready to ask your questions later on.
Yeah, thank you, Christian, and for giving a very good insight into how the network of companies that you're involved in has managed with the situation. And I think your last comment too about the creativity of people under these circumstances, I must admit this is a theme that appears throughout the kind of examples that I've certainly become aware of in the water sector, is how well people have responded and adapted and tried to find solutions, even if they weren't necessarily so obvious to begin with. We will come back to questions for Christian following the other 2 presentations. We would now turn to a utility that is from the size, I guess, double the size of the largest one in the total network for the Czech Republic, and that is the city of Tirana, and the deputy director then, Avis Cabrera. And if you can provide us with your presentation, Avis. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Greetings to everyone, to all the participants. As Philip mentioned, my name is Avis Cabrera, and I represent the Tirana Water and Wastewater Utility, being the position of the Deputy General Director. Tirana Water Utility is responsible to provide safe and clean water to approximately 1 million population, as well as to ensure proper treatment of the sewage. Our utility has a total of employees of 1,300. I'd like to share with you a short description of the impact of the COVID for our utility and the measures that we have taken. Albania locked down on March 9. We were among the first countries to take drastic measures the moment we had the first 2 cases with COVID positive. Our utility did not face problems to provide water to our customers, which in total are 250,000. We implemented the following crisis management process. Our utility has taken on a continuous basis measures for disinfections of our premises, providing masks to employees, hand sanitizer and gloves, and we incorporated social distancing measures, especially in our customer care offices. Since 3 weeks, the majority of staff is working now full-time from the office. Our offices were opened all the time, have been opened all the time, but with reduced staff. So most of our staff have been working in the beginning from home, and even today that we work normally, some offices work on a rotation basis based on the rules imposed by our government. Mothers with children work from home based on the rules of the government, even today. And due to COVID, our staff was not affected, so we didn't have any problem with the staff. Operational and maintenance staff were working all the time, dealing with the repairs, maintenance services. And in March, we recorded like 271 claims for water pipe breaks and 500 almost for sewage. While in April, we recorded 280 claims for pipe maintenance and 461 for sewage. Just a clarification, in Tirana, we don't have yet a functional wastewater treatment plant. Claims for water shortages in March were 373 and in April 255. As for the customer care offices, the first 2 weeks of the lockdown were opened only 4 offices. So we kept open all the time customers. Care points, but only into the first 2 weeks, only 4 offices, the biggest one, were opened. From a total of 11 customer care points that are located in the city. After 2 weeks, all customer care offices were working within normal working hours, of course, respecting all the rules imposed by the government. We have been communicating to the customers via social media and TV on the continuity of drinking water, and we suspended even later payment fees for a period of 2 months only. Our green number has been functional 24 hours all the time, where customers could call and present their requests or their claims. As for the revenues in March versus February, the total billing in cubic meter decreased by 5.3%, while total collections for water decreased by 33%, and total collections, not only water but other revenues, decreased by 30%. In April, the situation improved versus March, so total billing in cubic meter increased by 3.6%, while total collections for water increased by 35%, and total collections or total revenue, let's say, increased by 32%. So the biggest challenge we faced was in March, because people didn't pay as they normally do. They were afraid to go out, they would stay at home, even though we have this online payment. The situation, as you can see, improved in April, but still we face reduced revenues for private businesses because they weren't opened. Now Albania started to open little by little. We introduced recently a new electronic payment via Albania, which is a centralized platform where everybody can pay for different services, not only water, for energy and all other services. Our utility did not interrupt the reading process of the billing, so our staff has been on site for the electronic reading normally. And our utility, as for the civil works, we experienced interruption with only 1 week of one big investment project on the water treatment plant, but after 1 week, civil works started normally, and we finished these investments because it was toward the end. In addition, the investment to install smart metering in private businesses have been postponed because the businesses were closed. But other than these two investments, we are on track with investment projects. So we didn't experience any postponement of contract or civil works. According to our estimation, we expect that some private businesses might close, so the revenue might decrease in the following months. And for that, we started negotiations with EBRD, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, to get a loan with the purpose to cover operational expenses earmarked for COVID unexpected expenses. So we are waiting just the approval by the board to get this loan, which will be earmarked only to cover unexpected expenses. So finally, what we expect, what could be some of the recommendations, of course, we are going to ensure protective measures for staff and to respect all the regulations set by the government, including social distancing and maintaining the proper hygiene. We are implementing staff rotation, and this will be, of course, one of the challenges because that depends how the situation goes on. Even though Albania was not very much impacted, we had in total like 860 cases with infections, and out of that, only 30 people died, and the rest was recovered. Of course, that now our efforts are to ensure adequate water supply services, especially for the summer season ahead, which is the highest demanding season, especially given the dry winter. And that's why we just finished a big project to provide, to increase the water capacity in the water treatment plant of Tirana. Of course, automating the payments of water fees is one of, we are continuing to doing that. We are encouraging that people can pay online. And I just shared, we just introduced another electronic payments. And we are now in the process to develop and implement a business continuity plans. I mean, this is one of the, let's say, one of our challenges to develop these business continuity plans, which is not yet finished. We are also waiting for this financial support in order to revise our business continuity plan. So this is more or less the situation from Tirana. I hope that my presentation was within the minutes I was given.
Yeah, thank you very much, Avis. And I think you've touched on a number of important issues and also, I think, reconfirmed as well that the water sector quietly was able to manage the problem without it being a significant sort of focal point for the initiatives of governments or the media in terms of what was happening. And both of you, I think, have indicated this early communication about water supplies being secure were helpful. Before we turn to the last participant on this panel, I would just like to introduce that there is, and my colleague Kathy will put up a link to a survey that is being done. Both of you have mentioned the possibilities of reduced incomes, and in particular, perhaps payments to the utilities from businesses going out of operation being one side of it. In a number of countries in the world, apparently government institutions are also creating some difficulties for utilities by not paying their bills to the water utility and creating then financial difficulties. And we will put up a survey that is being done at the moment by the Water Integrity Network. And for those of you from utilities who have perhaps information that you could add to that survey, the people involved in that survey which is called the Water Integrity Network, would be very, very grateful for that as a worldwide survey in terms of the impacts. So with that, then we'll turn to our last speaker here on the panel. As I mentioned, Miodrag Babic has sincere apologies from Banja Luka. He was intending to be on, but we've had some technical difficulties connecting with him, and he's not able to join us. The final presentation then here, we'll get then to the questions, is from Wolfgang Eichelslader, who is responsible for a network of very small operators. And Wolfgang, I'll let you introduce your organization and the activities. Very different than a million population city, but nonetheless critical for those people who depend on that service. Thanks,
Okay, thank you, Phil. Good afternoon to everybody. The Upper Austrian umbrella organization, called in German Wasser, supports their members, and the members are very small water supplies from villages. You know, in Upper Austria, we have more than 4,000 villages, less to 20 households. And we have also enough groundwater that the villages can supply, in most cases, themselves from their near groundwater. So we have more than 1,000 such small cooperatives from 3-4 households up to 2,000 households. The umbrella organizations has as objectives to support them in team working or to pool ideas and resources, also helping them in procuring spare parts and equipment. We support and organize training courses for scheme managers, for chairpersons, for cashiers. So our task is also that we have a common meaning and a common position for water supply in the rural areas. For example, further education is that more than 1,000 persons come to us every year to train, and I think it's always very interesting that in the cooperatives we find a lot of people which are voluntary to deal with their own water supply. They are supported by specialists, but their daily work, the members are also the providers. So when we see now the COVID-19 situation, it is similar. Our timeline of activities was similar to the presented ones from Christian Hasenleiter. And the main task for the umbrella organization was that the small communities, the small cooperatives are able to support themselves. So the first main task for us was to inform with the most important informations, because water supply also in the rural area is a central task and is systematically relevant. And it has been a lot of home office. So the villages, the inhabitants live also during the week in the villages. We saw this also on the water consumption, that it was during the week doubling from the weeks before. Our first important message was that there is no transmission, that the coronavirus doesn't spread via food and drinking water and piped water. So there is no separate water supply or treatment needed. Tap water was safe and was able to consume. The second one was to give information to ensure also for the best guarantee of the water quality that measures are recommended. We transported these messages by our website, and also we sent letters to our members where we give recommendations that activities which are not absolutely necessary for maintaining the systems, and also for hygienic safety. This is on a later date to make it. For us, it was also important that they reduce their contacts also in the cooperatives, so that the scheme managers, there are less scheme managers, two, three, and a chairperson, that they make their main activities alone and not in the team like some weeks before. So personnel should be separated was one important message. Also, necessary journeys during the plant sections are best carried out alone. A further important point was examinations of drinking water quality. So routine sampling for the prescribed water tests should be continued as far as possible. So we get also from the drinking water checking institutes the message they are working, and also the control examinations which cannot be postponed because of hygienic reasons to be arranged immediately in any case. Also important was for us that the people use the general hygienic measures, hand washing, covering mouth and nose, and keeping in distance. And we provided, let me say, a forward planning for emergency operations. But to make a few back, we haven't been struggling in our business of water supplying. So for us, the spring drought, for example, not for drinking water, but for pool filling, is more challenging than the virus. And for the umbrella organization, we asked our members, it was also not necessary to organize something like face coverings or gloves. They have been able to arrange themselves what they need, what they needed. So our maybe communication as at one point, we used less video conferences, maybe one or two a week. We used mobile and email as a main communication system. So a further lessons learned was also the rural water supply was safe and functional, and sometimes maybe in the future it is more comfortable to invest in IT technology and in automatization, though the journeys between the different wells, springs, reservoirs are not necessary. So I think so. This was our main the history. What you back?
Thank you, Wolfgang. And I think we see from these three situations is again that despite very, very different circumstances, the water sector has been able to respond positively. It is the case that there have been some significant challenges, and I think a couple of you have mentioned smart metering or these automation of certain systems that maybe are going to come. These issues related to financing are critical, clearly, in terms of what future investments are going to be made or what the impact of the situation has. I would like now to turn to the questions that and encourage again people who are participating to be able to introduce their questions into the chat. I would just add a couple of notes from the situation in Banja Luka that Miodrag did provide me in written form prior to this meeting. Basically, within Banja Luka, they were able to operate the water services well, that they did not have interruption of service. They did have, as Avis has pointed out, a number of pipe breaks that had to be maintained or repaired. They were able to manage those equipment, or those crews were out doing that. What they did not do was do new connections, and out of that, they probably lost some sort of revenue, is his perception. And they did, in the same way that I think all of you have spoken about, split the teams to make sure that people were not infected, or if they were infected, that other representatives could manage the work that those people have been able to, or that work has been able to be done. I would now turn, and again, as I say, encourage you to please put your questions in. Specifically, Avis, if you very, very quickly can just convey whether the consumption patterns within Albania were modified, or for you within Tirana were modified under the circumstances. I think from what Christian said, there was a difference between these industrial users and the domestic going up and the industrial a little bit down. But for your own situation, if you can say. Your Avis's microphone.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for the question. It was from Mr. Daniel Jimenez. So yes, so we had different patterns. So I have some figures to share. For example, in March, the consumption compared to February, so the month before, for the budgetary institution, it was decreased by 21%. For the households, actually, we had an increase of the consumption by 1.9%, so almost 2%. For private entities, we had a decrease by 56%. So this is the biggest decrease we faced was in the public, in the commercial customers. If we go to April compared to March, so for the budgetary, we had again a decrease by 2.6%. For households, we have an increase this time, with bigger increase by 5.72%. And for private, we have an increase by 3.39%. So normally, we don't have this kind of increase for the private entities, but since some of the businesses were opened, so we had this increase, which is still small for the private entities. So we don't know yet how many businesses will maybe go bankrupt. So we are going to see what is going to happen in the coming months. But we expect that, of course, the revenues will not be like 1 year ago. As for the other question regarding the illegal connections, we don't have that problem in Tirana, because we have worked on that 2 years ago when we had the reform of the water in Albania, throughout Albania. So almost all our customers are now formalized. So we don't face any illegal connections, and that is not an issue now in Tirana. I don't know whether I answered the questions or not, so let me know.
No, very, very good. Thank you, because it clearly, yeah, the circumstances are different in the different areas, but I think in very much a case where this economic issues are going to be critical. I will come to the economic questions, but before I do, I would ask Christian Hasenleitner, if you could just provide a comment. There was a question about the testing of COVID in the wastewater, and if you could just provide the experience, in particular, I think the interest was where the testing was done and what is actually being done in this case. If you can just provide a quick answer to this.
So it was done in Barun. It's a district city with about 35,000 inhabitants on the western outskirts of Prague. It was carried out there 3 times. and there were no results or positive testing. And another program is running on a wastewater treatment plant in České Budějovice, but I don't have results on this already. But this will come for sure.
Yeah, this is a topic I think that we may want to address in future, because I think one of the comments that was made last week, I believe it was Walter Kling from some research that had been done, is using the wastewater treatment systems as a basis of monitoring the virus and seeing how the developments are happening amongst the population. But in any case, for now, that
maybe
go ahead.
I can add, we did it in the past, or used the same methodology already in the past for drugs, for example. So I'm quite sure that this issue will be carried on in the future, and of course could be a very good instrument to follow this.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe for all three of you, if I can get a very concise statement to what is, I think, one of the central issues in this question, and actually, Christian, if you can actually begin, is the postponement of payment of invoices. In your own case, APHIS, I understood you had to close down your facilities. There was a payment delays. Wolfgang, I don't know if the payment schemes are really critical in these services, but if you can provide comment related to this. But you had a postponement within your own situation, Christian, of 30-day delays. Was that a government imposed or something the company did? And what are the implications of that for the future then, in terms of the revenues available?
So it was done by the companies themselves. It was not from the government side, but it was done because we closed the customer service centers and in general also to give a positive signal to the customers. But we have to divide the different groups of customers in this case. So of course we had a lot of especially household family houses and household consumers which are already paying online, or we collect the cash from their bank accounts directly. But still, especially in the rural areas and for elderly people, they don't want to use this method. They like to go to the customer service and pay in cash. So it's not possible for them, for elderly people, or in most cases, or in many cases, it's not possible for them to collect the money. They want to pay in cash, and to avoid problems coming out of delays in payment. That was also the reason to give this positive signal to the customers, to the not huge amount of customers still paying in cash, I have to say. Concerning the industry or the other businesses, we face two issues. One is that there's no problem. They are paying quite normally. There's no difference in all. But for example, the Czech state, like many other states, set up a funding scheme for companies or businesses in trouble. And to prove that these businesses are in trouble, they have to show that they are running out of cash and not able to pay fixed costs. So they are not paying because they are not able to, but they have to prove that they are running out of money. And this is also part of a reason why we are having delays in payment. But up to now, I have to say it's not a huge issue for us. The future, as I stated in my presentation already, what the future brings, it's very difficult to say. It depends strongly on the development of the economy in general, and nobody is able to say right now what will happen in the next 6 or 12 or 18 months.
Yeah, thank you. Wolfgang, if I could get a clarification from you in terms of the economics of the types of operations. These are people investing themselves, partially, I understand, in their own facilities so that they are having to maintain them. From what you described, they managed it very well. or at least were able to find a way to deal with the circumstances. If you could just comment if there are economic issues related to this rural service delivery, and just if you could, again, just make a few very small comments, because we're running out of time now, on this question of, my understanding from what you've indicated is the drought circumstances now are actually a more significant problem, or a significant problem that you're having to deal with in parallel.
Yes. Payment as a cash payment, now we have no cash payment. Everything is going by e-banking. It's a state of the art, and they pay not monthly or quarterly, they pay once a year, because I think it's easy, because in the cooperatives it's the legal construction that the owners and members are also the users and consumers. It's their own supply. We have different between households and farmers, because the farmers and the animals from the farmers, they need the water every time. And we have some special parts, industries which was closed, but a closed factory needs less water. And we have the tourist villages. We have a lot of cooperatives in tourist regions, and these resorts has also no guests, no water, and less costs. We in the umbrella, we have not heard for financial problems during the last 2 months. Spring drought and water scarcity and climate change is also in the rural area a main topic. And so there have to be also in the future further efforts to find resources, to make more exploitation, and also to win water at quantity is a problem. And though you are also sometimes in a conflict with agriculture or with constructing households to get the protection areas. I think this is our main task for the future. Maybe also in the voluntary part that we can win people which are able to, which want to be voluntary in the water sector. Maybe if there is less tourist activities, they find that to work in the water part for their village, they had a new business. You understand what I mean?
Yes, yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, again, it's quite clear that there are very different circumstances in these rural circumstances. And obviously then the issue has not been so much connected with the corona crisis, as well as some of the other circumstances happening around, in this case, than the drought. And Avis, for you, could you very quickly just say, and particularly one of the questions is the operational costs, and if your operational costs have also been affected by the situation, and whether you also, as a utility that has international loans or financial loans, whether you have difficulty to pay those.
Yes, of course, our operational costs have been affected because we pay and we cover expenses with our revenues. Since the revenues have been decreased, I mean, not normally like they were before, so this has impacted our operational costs. For example, we have some loans which we need to repay. We have the EBRD loan, we have an overdraft from another local bank here, we have some other sovereign loans from the central government for which we are responsible to repay. And also we have some arrears that we owe to the energy power company. So we pay in tranches based on an agreement that we have to repay every month a certain amount. And of course, we have other big expenses like private guards, because by law we need to protect all our let's say, size of the network, we have to pay the rent, we have loan interest, as I mentioned, maintenance expenses, VAT, and so on. So therefore, we expect that the revenues might decrease we don't know yet how it will be the consumption patterns, but that's why we have thought in advance and we started negotiating with EBRD to get this loan so that we are able to continue with all our investment projects that we have in mind. So yes, we have been impacted regarding covering our expenses.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I would just begin to wrap up now. We're come to a close, and just before we do, it seems that there are a number of questions that are related to the wastewater issue. Christian, I don't know if you have had a chance to look at any of those, and if there's any of those that you particularly want to respond to, if you could. Yeah, thank you.
So on one hand, I just see the question concerning the reopening now and the Legionellas. It's an issue which is not directly related with us because it's in the responsibility of the hotels or households which are could be affected by this. We are informing customers like this, like bigger hotels and so on, about the danger, about the risk, and what they can do to handle this reopening properly. But it's not a direct risk which is related to us. You will find on our website already or during the next days exact supporting material on this issue. Concerning the wastewater itself, as far as I'm aware of, but no specialist in this, the virus itself is not found in the wastewater. It's DNA or rests of DNA. So that's this point. So you cannot, or it's very difficult to get sick from this directly. So this is the other issue. And maybe one just additional information to this operational costs. Of course, there are operational costs on the personal side, on the security equipment, on the IT side, but this is also not a huge issue up to now, which couldn't be covered by the income. So we don't have any problem paying the wages and so on. Cash situation is more or less normal, no big issues there. There's another positive impact from the crisis. We had real problems in the past to get staff, to get specialists, but also operational personnel. That is over. So we get enough personnel. And we don't have problems to get new employees. So I think many people see now, and that's also related to what Wolfgang said before, that many people see now that this business at the end is maybe not paying the highest wages, but it's safe.
Yeah, thank you. And with this comment, then I actually will wind down this session and thank you to all three of our panelists and also to Miodrag, who sent some comments. I think I can say from the situation in Banja Luka that they are experiencing some loss of revenues. Clearly, as each of you, he's provided me some notes to that effect. They also, though, have managed, I would say, the situation well, as I indicated earlier, in terms of being able to keep the operations going. But there is some fears that they have in terms of what might be the consequences in terms of their ability to pay back loans or to manage future investments, although up to now, it looks like they can do that. But in any case, thank you to all three of you for your both personal experiences and sort of providing these insights from the experience of the last few months. And if there is a message out of it, I think it is following on what Christian has said and Wolfgang addressed earlier. It really is attribute to the people of the water sector that these services have been able to continue and have gone well. And you three are part of that network, that community that has been able to manage this sector in a good way despite these difficulties. And it's not always necessarily the most glamorous of professions, but nonetheless, you see it in circumstances like this, how important the safety of water is to people. The minute that became clear that that was not an issue, people were relieved and were able to at least be assured that that component of the situation that they were not going to be affected by. In the chat, you can see some documentation related to publications and materials that are related to this topic, particularly on the wastewater side, which we perhaps in a future activity can deal with as well. But in any case, for now, I would draw your attention to the Danube Water Program website or the IWD website, where there are links to a variety of the key documents, institutions in the region. For those people from Albania, for example, Shukolb has been able to do to list documents. Our colleagues from UCV in Serbia, a listing of documents in local languages that are able to help people. And one of the important issues that has arisen in this is the communication amongst people in the sector. And we hope that this is able to continue and that this crisis has been reinforced our community of people working together effectively. I would just like to draw your attention to the fact that, as I said at the outset, the third session in this webinar series will be held on May 28th, and same time at 1500. That one will be focused on the assurance of business continuity, and we, within the Danube Water Program and IWD, has organized together with the water utility associations from the region a Danube Learning Partnership, where we've been offering a crisis management program, water safety planning program that has been able to be utilized and presented in a number of the countries of the region. This particular topic, pandemic, was one that we understand was originally one of the scenarios of this, but many people had a difficult time relating to it because they couldn't believe that it could happen in the way that it has happened. And clearly it has, and the basic tools, I would say, from water safety planning and assuring business continuity are similar, irrespective of what the crises are, the management arrangements. And I think each of your examples has shown us that, both from the larger utilities, I mean, 1 million inhabitants, down to small ones, such as those in Upper Austria. I would like to once again thank all of you panelists, but also to thank all of the participants and encourage you to join again and to continue the dialogue that we have initiated under this set of webinars, for us to learn from this experience and to be better prepared in future scenarios that we might have to deal with. We've heard from Upper Austria the problem of water supply, the crisis of climate that we are experiencing on and off, that we as a community of people in the water sector are going to have to deal with. Thank you all for participating. Thank you to my colleagues at the Danube Water Program for the cooperation in getting this event together. And stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.